This video has been one that I didn't necessarily ever think I would make, if I'm being honest. I was not one on the boat of the Carson Wentz train when the Colts were looking, the rumors were coming out, especially when, the Eagles they threw out a few smoke screens saying that the Bears offered like almost two first rounders, like a Matt Stafford type package. And I knew that we never would trade that much. Obviously, then it came out that was never offered, that they were just, again, trying to hike up the value, which is understandable. It's part of the sport. But regardless, here we are now. The Indianapolis Colts quarterback is Carson Wentz. Um, I mean, if you know me at all, you know I love the Colts, and I've hated our QB situation over the last 3 years, and it's still just as crazy. For those of you who don't know, the Colts have not had the same starting QB to start the season under Frank Reich. We had Andrew Luck Reich's first year, then Jacoby Brissett, and then Philip Rivers, and now Carson Wentz. So Frank Reich is 4 for 4 in different starting quarterbacks, which has got to be an all-time stat if I've ever heard one, especially in today's era of football where the quarterback is 90% of your team, it seems like. And I will say, we won 11 games with 9,000-year-old Philip Rivers, starting his first season under Reich on the Colts. Obviously, he played for him in Philadelphia for 2 years when Reich was over there, him and Sirianni both, but still, it was his first time under Reich's administration as a head coach. So winning 11 games, was not bad, and almost beating the Bills, who went to the AFC Championship. So again, not a bad season last year, but this year, man, things have changed a lot already. So I'm going to start with more of my initial doubts of the Wentz trade, or things that I looked at and was like, this is not what I want with my starting quarterback. He was just honestly pretty garbage last season. I mean, I don't think there's any way around that. But 15 picks through 12 games. I mean, he was putting up Vinny Testaverde numbers in a different color green jersey, basically. I mean, it was just not anything to be desirable for. I mean, that's awful. He also led the NFL in uncatchable throws percentage, but I don't want to put up a screen grab of that because PFF might sue me. But you can look it up and find that he did lead the NFL in uncatchable passes, which again, not a stat you want to be the first in. And don't get me wrong, like the Eagles were not a great team last year. They were beat all get out, and not to mention their O line was basically a revolving door of players. So, you know, you throw in then the lack of a number one receiver, because I mean, even their number one was Alshon or Deshaun Jackson, and I mean those guys first off are both in their 30s, and second off, both can't stay healthy. But again, I believe you can only blame injury so much because it's an excuse. You can scheme around that. There are players who have been, you got to get the ball out quicker. You need to start running the ball more, try to establish the run. You need to show that, you can do everything in order to get that big play. Because the Eagles have, I mean, Wentz has always been a home run hitter. I mean, we know that. He's very, Andrew Luck-esque in where, he loves the big play. But when your O-line isn't as good as usual, you can't be taking those hits. And I mean, I get it. He's had the luxury of having Jason Peters, Brandon Brooks, Jason Kelsey, and Lane Johnson. But still, you don't always have 5 all-pro level linemen. You have to be ready to not have that. And he obviously wasn't. And don't get me wrong, I get that I was also on the coaching staff because, man, they just didn't even try to change their offense and try to adapt to this kind of stinky O-line that they had. But regardless, you can use that as an excuse only so much before I'm just like, come on, dude, like pick up your game and stop blaming everyone else. And I will say though, at least he didn't, wasn't out, on a revenge tour talking about how it was everyone else's fault but his. And I get, he was trying to play hero ball, but when he didn't need to, but you just can't, I get that, you're down a lot, but you need to have the ball in your hands to win. And by forcing the ball downfield and turning over the ball every play, you just aren't doing that. And so injuries aren't an excuse, but he still just didn't play well. And I just feel like they weren't trying to adapt and overcome. It was also kind of weird last year. This is like my weirdest critique, but I mean, people love him in Philly, like his teammates and stuff. They've never really had a bad thing to say about him, but I mean, him and Peterson were weird. Like, there are reports that they didn't talk for weeks on end, which, again, isn't something you want between your offensive-minded head coach and your star quarterback who's being paid over $30 million a year. But, I mean, I don't know. And I don't know whose fault that is, but, again, he's your franchise QB. So even if it was Peterson's fault, someone should have been in there trying to work with him. And that's just, it's absolutely absurd to me that they weren't trying to work together. And, I mean, I'm putting blame on both sides. So, again, I'm allotting some of that blame to him. And then you throw in, I mean, again, like I said, he was their franchise, over $30 million a year, And I mean, you haven't reached out to him. That's just ridiculous to me. One of the other things, it's not as big of a concern because he's young, but the injuries are still a concern. When you play 5 years and only have completed 2 of the 5 years to the fullest, I mean, that's just not great. I mean, I'm not even going to talk about the Nick Foles thing. That's blown out of proportion, but I mean, he still has missed the end of the season 3 times out of his 5 years, which is scary. I mean, I've seen with luck what that can do to a player, and that's just really scary to me. Sort of going back to my old point of attitude maybe becoming an issue. He did seem pretty psyched about signing with the Colts. I mean, he was reaching out to our players and like talking to them the first day he was traded. Even before the official trade had went through, because obviously there's a bunch of logistic crap that has to happen for the trade to be official. Even before all that, he was, reaching out to the Colts players, talking to them. Like Kenny Moore, Julian Blackmon were just two that put it on their social media. So again, that could not have been his fault, but again, I have to just assume that he had some fault because I mean, no one's really infallible. All right, so now I'm going to the positives, and the contract may not be ideal. I mean, $30 million a year if he doesn't work out is not great, but only giving up a third and a conditional second is pretty great for a once MVP candidate. And the condition for this second rounder next year is it moves up to a first if he starts 75% of the season, or if he starts 70% of the season and we make the playoffs. So then, I mean, even if we do, if that happens, if that condition is met, it's going to be a late first anyway. So the thinking is, shoot, is that much better than a second? So, I mean, I'm not too upset about that, honestly. And that's just Chris Ballard being Chris Ballard. We've been drafting unbelievable over the last 4 years. So the fact that he gave up this much also makes me think he really does believe in him. So if the only downside really is a contract, and that's only a bad thing if he ends up sucking. If he's great, I mean, shoot, if he throws 30 touchdowns a season, 9 picks, I mean, that's worth $30 million in today's NFL. I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo's being paid 137 over 5, and that dude is, I mean, we can talk about, I've already talked about that. And so again, $30 million for the next 4 years. I wouldn't be too upset, honestly. Like, that's not a huge deal to me if he ends up playing at that 37 rate that we know he's capable of. He also has a great team around him, very reminiscent of his MVP season, where he's got a good team in the trenches. We have a top tier O line, and then you throw in there a very good D line. Obviously, I wouldn't say top tier D line, but I'd say top 10 defense. We were a top defense every week last year, so I think that's a fair assumption to say. And we have $50 million in cap, a young receiver core, and we won 11 games with old man Phil. And don't get me wrong, he's not bad, but again, he was 40 years old and ready to retire. There's only so much you can do. It was his last hurrah. And I think the biggest thing is the unbelievable run game. From Jonathan Taylor to Nyheim Hines, I mean, you have a great scat back in Nyheim, and then you have an unbelievable young running back in Jonathan Taylor who just looks like a monster. I mean, that's something he's never had. I mean, Miles Sanders and Boston Scott are good. Corey Clement's, all right, but I'm not going to really talk about him. But those guys are all good, but, I mean, they don't compare. I'm sorry. In my opinion, they do not compare to Jonathan Taylor and Nyheim Hines. So Colts are also a run-first team. He's never really played on that. So he's going to be able to just kind of relax, figure out all of his issues while this team just balls out, because they did with Rivers. I mean, Rivers would try and lose this game sometimes with 2-3 interception games, and we still were competitive in both those games. So, I mean, I think if he can just figure out those mistakes, I think he'll do fine, and he has a great team to do that because he can kind of relax since the pressure's off him to play hero ball 24/7. Again, the thing everyone else says is his best season came under Reich. He had 33 touchdowns and 7 interceptions through 13 games with Reich before getting injured. So they were 11-2. They looked fantastic. Won a Super Bowl that year with that team. So again, you understand the team was around him, but Reich was a part of putting that team around him. So if Wentz can learn to trust the Colts, I think it'll be a great thing. The biggest thing, though, is trust and how broken is Wentz, because you look at guys like David Carr or Andrew Luck, having a bad O-line, even for just a year or two, can really screw up a player. And obviously David Carr and Luck had it for a lot longer, but Wentz took a lot of hits last year. If I did my numbers right, 104 hits and 50 of those being sacks. So again, that's not great. And that was only through 12 games. So I don't even want to look at how much that would have been. He would have been almost averaging 10 hits a game. And you can't really do that and be sustainable. So the Colts are going to work to get that off him. But now it's going to be a question, what if did he get happy feet? Now, I don't really think he did. But again, we didn't really get to see him play the last 4 games. So that's his most recent games, so we would have gotten way more to see off those, but he didn't play. Can he stop forcing the ball? Well, with a good run game and a reliable defense, I think he will be able to. Maybe he'll learn to just relax and be like, hey, I don't need to throw 90-yard passes every play because I have a good defense that'll hold me away. And I have an O-line that's going to protect me. If this change of scenery, doesn't affect Wentz, then it fails, I guess. But if it does, it'll calm him down. And like I said, I think it is ideal. It was the ideal team for him. Every freaking analyst and their brother has said that. But it's just going to be a question of if he actually can overcome all those. Wentz could be permanently broken, or he could return to MVP status. And who honestly knows? I'm just praying for all that's holy that we win some football games, because if I'm being just 100% free of stats and research out of a Colts fan, I'm just sick of having new starting QBs. It's been 4 years now in a row, and it's one thing when you draft a guy and he doesn't work out, he doesn't develop. It's another thing when you sign a guy fully expecting him to play like Luck. Everyone expected Luck to play 10 more years. Tired early, he was burnt out. Jacoby Brissett, we signed him to a $30 million a year contract. That's a big contract. So we expected him to be the starter. And then he flops. He has that MCL injury, and we're moving on. Then Rivers. You expect that guy. Again, proven great in the game. Moves on. Wentz. He's on a contract. Okay, but I'm not letting that dissuade me, because as you've seen 2 other times, we had quarterbacks on contract, and they didn't end up being a starter. So I just want the same quarterback again. It's the most weird thing in the world. How are we a playoff contender 2 of the last 3 years, yet we haven't had the same starting quarterback? I don't know. I just want one quarterback to please stay on our team and be our quarterback. I'm just getting sick of it, because I really wanted to trade up for a rookie this year. So the fact that we traded for Wentz, I was not necessarily happy. But again, just win some football games and I'll be happy. All right, so what do you guys think? Like I said, this video is exhausting, because it's just like this whole situation has been like one big long sigh for me, because I really just don't know what he's going to do. I'm optimistic, but I'm also hesitant. So I'm like in this weird limbo, basically, where until the football season starts, until I get to see him taking reps under center, I just have absolutely no clue how to feel, and that just sucks. So again, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I have some cool new stuff on the way that I can't reveal yet, but I will reveal soon enough. And yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.